if you're like me, you might get a little bit of anxiety about the idea of budgeting your money. I've tried budgeting over the years and it just does not work for me. And part of the problem is this idea of predicting what's happening, what will happen, what the budget should be. I almost always give up within a couple of months of even trying it. Today, what I want to talk about is a different strategy altogether, and that's called cash flow management. What we're going to do is teach you how to build a spreadsheet that allows you to track your finances so that you understand where the cash is going and give you an idea of when you might run out of cash or when you might have excess in which you can spend on things. So let's start out by just opening up an Excel spreadsheet. And of course, any spreadsheet will do. Now, what I want to stress is this is about one account. This is the account in which you do all your transactions. In my family, we call it the black hole because the black hole is where money goes in and it just seems to disappear. It goes away and you never get it back out again. Essentially, what we're going to do is track all of the expenses that we have month to month so that we can look over a year and see what happens to our finances every month. So you want to start with the beginning balance. And obviously, once you have the beginning balance, you're going to need your form of income. And of course, that income can be your income, your spouse's income, a second job. It could be Social Security. It could be child support. Whatever it is, we're going to list those here. And once we have that, then we just kind of income total. And your expenses is the next thing we want to track. And the first one we're going to track is things like your housing. And that could be either a mortgage payment or it could be your rent, whatever it is. But we're going to do stuff like that. Homeowners insurance, lawn care, pest control, maintenance. We're going to list those things. Now, all of these may not be relevant, so I'm just putting some examples there. Even this person might not have all of those things in there. So that's housing. So let's go to utilities. This is essentially where you put any of the utilities that you have, those monthly statements that just allow you to stay existing in the modern world. All right, so let's do the next one, transportation, car payment. This person only has one car payment, not two car payments, so we're just gonna put the one in there. But you also need things like auto insurance, and you need the gas and maintenance. And you can even do things, if you live in a metro area, you could do things like tolls. This is anything you want to be able to track so that you understand where the money is going, because there are a lot of these little categories that just your money just seems to evaporate into. And what we want to do is identify those so that we can see where our money is going and maybe even make some changes if we want to. All right, food and grocery. Some people don't like to split those out. Food is food, and they just want to put it all together. One reason I split it out is because you can lose a lot more money in dining out and delivery and those things faster than you can with just buying groceries. And that's not to say that we're going to stop doing any of those things. It's just helping us understand where the money is going. And that it empowers us to decide whether we want to make that change or not. If we don't want to make a change, we don't have to make a change. This isn't about constraining you. It's about understanding where your money is going right now. All right, so let's now do health and wellness categories. Let's do things like health insurance, out of pocket. That's your co-pays or anything you need to pay on top of, or bills that aren't handled within the insurance. We can also add things like gym membership and that sort of thing. This is, again, just let's track everything that we can. What we want to do is as granular as is easy to do. If it's too hard to go in and separate all those things out, you're not going to do it anyway. But what we're really trying to do is, if it's easy to pull those things out, let's pull them out. Let's track them. It gives us a really good idea of what's going on. Entertainment. That is something let's do streaming video. Now, we can absolutely split this up. We could do Netflix and Paramount Plus and Disney Plus and Hulu, whatever you subscribe to. You could separate them all out so you could watch them. In this case, we're going to combine them all into one just to make it pretty easy. Okay, these people also use Spotify as a subscription. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to put something in there called going out. This may be where you put some of the things like, date night dinners instead of putting that in dining out. Dining out, I kind of see that as just kind of your day-to-day routine. And I see that as a different category than spending because of entertainment. If you're eating out for entertainment, that feels like a different reason to be eating out. So I don't want to mash those two together, because then it conflicts what it is we're trying to do, whether we're just trying to replace a meal or whether we're actually enjoying life. Let's do miscellaneous debt payments. This is where, the cash flow is going to siphon out if you have any debts. And so this might be a personal loan, or it could be credit card payments. I mean, this could be just your day-to-day credit card usage, but that doesn't really give you a clear idea of where the money's going. In this particular case, this credit card payment is actually going to be the actual minimum credit card payment due, because these people are in some debt. And we'll get to that as we put that in there. You can also have things like student loans and that sort of thing. You get the idea. You notice that we have some debt in other places like the mortgage or a car payment, and we're doing that on purpose. You could put all of that into debt if you wanted to. It's just about kind of what feels right to you. All right, so now let's do family and personal care. All right, this is stuff like you might have daycare costs in there. You might have school expenses. You might have clothing, hair and beauty, pet care, things like kids' sports fees, that sort of thing. I'm listing a bunch of them just to give you an idea. This person doesn't have all of these, but it gives you an idea of what kinds of things you can put into this category. All right, seasonal expenses. These are things that aren't monthly expenses, but that definitely come up, right? A great example is birthday spend, vacation, or travel, Christmas, holidays you spend specifically on. That's what you want to put in this category. Okay, there's another category, charitable donations. There's a reason to do this, and it's not all about just getting out of debt. It's knowing where your money is going. And for a lot of people, those charitable donations is an important value that they like to maintain. And so we want to be able to track those too, because that's part of where the money is going. And some people may do this exercise because they want to be able to put more money towards charitable donations. So we want to know what's going on there. So it could be your church, or it could be a charitable organization. You may even list them if there are specific causes that really matter to you. And then finally, because we're looking at cash flow and we're not just looking at your total net worth, what we want to do is put in here savings and investments. And that may be stuff like transferring to a savings account. It could be an investment, transferring to an investment account. It might be life insurance payments. These are the broad categories. And if you have any others, you stick them in here as well. Anything you want to do to track it. And then what we want to do is we want to look at the total expenses. So that's going to be the line that gives us our total expenses. And then what we want to do is understand the monthly delta between what we earn and what we spend. And so that's the monthly net cash flow. Finally, ending balance. All right, so let's go back up here and show how we can kind of do this a little bit. So let's do this, just make it a little bit easier to see. All right, so now what we want to do is we're going to track these by month. So let's just start in, say, September, and then October, November, December. All right, let's pull this across. So we've got a little bit of time there. We're going to center that. Okay. So in this case, these people's beginning balance in their account that we're tracking here is 1203. So that's what we stick right in there. That's our beginning balance. And their paycheck is, they've got two people working. This is the net pay that comes into their bank account. This is not counting any of their Social Security payments or if something's being pulled out for their 401k. This is net of what actually lands in their bank account, because that's what we're trying to track with this spreadsheet. So the first person has a monthly income of $38.80 and the second person has $22.60. And so now we go sum the total, and their total amount of money that's hitting their account every month is $61.40. Now, some of you may have variation in your income because Maybe you get sales commissions or something. And that's where you're going to want to put something in there that is realistic. And we'll talk a little bit about how to kind of solidify these numbers a little bit later. But if you do have various numbers, that's what you want to start putting in here if you can predict them. All right, the mortgage. These guys have a mortgage, and their mortgage payment is $23.90. Now, I don't have things like their taxes because they escrow that with their mortgage. So it just comes out with the payment. And because all we're concerned about is the payment coming out and where that cash is going, we're not going to have a different line item for their taxes at the end of the year. Their homeowner's insurance, it's a yearly fee. That's not something that's hitting in September. So what I want to do is just highlight that and note it, because right now it's not hitting in September, but it's going to hit because they pay it every 6 months. These people do not do lawn care. They do that on their own. Pest control, they do on their own. And maintenance, I want to highlight that as well, because it's not something most people don't like spend an exact amount on maintenance on their home every single month. And so that's something that could pop up or be different every month. And so what I want to do is highlight that in a different color, just so that we're aware that that is not showing up, but somehow there's got to be money for that when it's needed. Let's look at our utilities. Gas, they spend $80, $95 on their water, $221 for electricity. In their town, trash is included with the water. And so we're just going to, let's see, I got that backwards. My test sheet was different. So electricity is $221, water is $95, but trash is included in the water in their town. So we're just going to, there's no line for that. Their internet is $160, and that includes their internet they've bundled with their cell phone. So again, I'm not going to split those two because it goes to one place and it's one account. So that's what they spend on both internet and their cell phones. So now let's look at transportation. Like I said, they have one car payment, and that is for $432. And auto insurance, again, that's something that they pay twice a year. So it's not coming up in September, but it does come up. So we're going to highlight that just so that we know that we're going to have to come back and put that in at some point. Gas, their commute is fairly regular. They run about $180 a month. And again, maintenance, one of those things. We did a study a while back, and we found that one of the biggest surprises that hit people is car maintenance. It's one of those things you just take for granted. Your car's working until all of a sudden it isn't, and that becomes an unexpected expense. So we're going to highlight that, yes, we don't have any car maintenance costs this month, but they will come up. And then we've got tolls, not trolls. This person does not live in a metro area where they have to pay tolls, so we're just going to skip that. All right. Food and grocery. This one is a sore point for a lot of people who are feeling the bite of inflation. $650 and $320 on dining out. Health insurance. These people pay their health insurance through their employer, and consequently, it's pulled out before they get their paycheck. So we're not going to add another number here. If we wanted to add it, if we wanted to track it specifically, we would have to add it into our income and then subtract it here. Yeah, but we're just going to leave it out of both places. Out-of-pocket costs, they do have a few prescriptions and whatnot that tend to cost them a little bit every month. And then they do have a gym membership. All right, streaming video. These guys have a couple of different streaming video services, and in total, it's cost them $45, and their Spotify is $13, and they spend about $110 a month just going out, something different that's not counted in that dining number. Loan payments. They do not currently have a personal loan, but they do have $8,000 in credit card bills. Now, because they have credit card debt, they have wisely stopped using the credit card. And the reason you want to do that is because when you carry a balance from one month to another, every charge you make will start incurring interest the very next day. You don't get a grace period on purchases if you're carrying a balance. And so because they're carrying a balance, they've stopped using the credit card for their daily purchases like they used to. They're now using a debit card, which is why it's easier to track some of these things out of this account. But that's something to keep in mind. And because they have an $8,000 credit card balance, their minimum due payment is $220. They do have a student loan payment of $89 a month right now, and that's kind of the extent of the miscellaneous debt. They do not have any kids in daycare right now. And school expenses is another one of those things that school started in August. This is September. So it's not showing up right now, but we want to highlight it so that we don't forget that that's a future cost. It's not in September right now, but we need to account for it. This is where they weren't exactly sure how much they're spending on clothing. But instead, they didn't go through and analyze everything, but they figured, well, let's just put $100 in there every single month. Let's see what that does. When the missus goes out and gets her hair done, it costs about $120 and anything else that she's doing. But it's not every single month. And so what we want to make sure we do is note that so that we know that it's not something that hits every single month. It might be every other month or something like that. Pet care, they don't have any pets, and they currently don't have any kids in sports that might cost extra fees and whatnot. So we're going to leave that blank. Once again, birthdays is another one that we really want to be aware of, because it's not, everybody doesn't have a birthday every single month, or there isn't a single birthday every single month. And so what we're going to do is we just need to highlight that needs to pop up on their birthday months, and we're going to have to put that in later. Vacation and travel, September, there's no vacation and travel in this month, but again, that is something, these two categories are ones that we want to make sure that we don't forget about once we start putting everything in. Currently, these people don't have anything in charitable donations. One of the things that they're trying to do is identify whether they have excess money that they are willing to support the causes that matter to them. So there's nothing there. But these people are trying to be fairly responsible. They're putting 10% of their income into a savings account. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to take this and we're going to times that by 10%. So that gives you an idea of how much they hope to be able to put away in a savings account as they go. They currently aren't doing any insurance or any investment transfers outside of the 401k through work. They are donating through there, but again, that comes out of their paycheck before they get it, and we're tracking just their costs here. All right, so the total expenses, we want to sum everything from the top of the expenses down. All right, and now what we want to know is what their net monthly cash flow is. And so we take their income, we go up here, we take the income and we subtract the total expenses like that. So right now they have an excess of $231. That's including the savings that they keep putting aside. So that's fantastic. And so what we want to do is we want to take the beginning balance of the month and we want to add the monthly net cash flow. And there you go. So at the end of the month, they're expecting $1,400 to be in their account if they're tracking everything properly. So now let's start looking at what this does over time. So the first thing we want to do, and just to make things easy, I am going to freeze my paints here so that as we scroll, we don't lose our months and whatnot. All right. So the beginning balance for the next month is always going to be the ending balance from the month before. So we're going to equal, and we're going to go down there and hit the ending balance like that. And then we can take that and we can just pull it across like that. And you can see it's zeros because we don't have anything populated there yet. Now, these paychecks, we're just going to assume the exact same amount in perpetuity. They may get a bonus or something, and that we'll want to put in there at some point if it happens. But right now we're just tracking what is actually there. And so we're going to track the income across that way. All right. We're going to take the mortgage and take that all the way across as well, because that's a set amount that they have to pay. But now we got to start thinking about that homeowner's insurance. And what we realized was that they pay that homeowner's insurance in 2 installments in the year. And the first one is in February, and the second one is in August. So that was just last month, but we're not counting that. And so we want to plug those in right now so we don't forget about them. All right, so they don't really anticipate any maintenance right now, but again, we want to highlight that just to make sure. Now, this is where if you have a very seasonal difference in your utilities, you could go in and find out, well, in the summer, I use more water. In the winter, I use more gas to keep my house warm, whatever. You can adjust that. Right now, just to keep things simple and clean, we're going to pull those all the way across because we're not going to dig in that deeply right now. We just want to see where we stand. And again, the car payment, pretty consistent every month. And again, gas is the same way. You might choose to adjust that if you do road trips or whatnot, and you know you're going to hit a road trip. But right now, we're just going to set it as it is. Again, grocery and dining and delivery, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to pull those across. Out-of-pocket costs and gym membership, we're going to pull those across. Streaming video going out, we're going to assume all of that is stable. One of the things that's interesting about that credit card payment is that these guys have a fairly decent credit score, and they realized that they were paying more than they needed to on their interest on their credit card. And so in the next month, they got approved for a debt consolidation loan, which means that zeroed out the payments in their credit card. The cool thing about the debt consolidation loan is that the monthly payment was actually lower than the current payment, even though they're going to accelerate paying it off and they're paying less in interest because they got a better interest rate. So now we pull the personal loan across, but we do not pull the credit card because they've stopped using their credit cards because they got themselves into trouble once and they don't want to do that again. Student loan payment, we're going to pull that across. And this is where we get to some of the unusual expenses. So school expenses. So it feels like every August they end up having to spend about $150 to get their kids ready for school and whatnot. So we're going to stick that into August of next year. And the clothing, we're just going to pull that across. Remember, they weren't really sure, but it's easy for us to just kind of adjust that as we go if we want. Hair and beauty, that's not every month, so we don't want to drag that all the way across. But it may happen every probably 6 to 8 weeks. So we're just going to kind of stick this in. So we're just going to throw some stuff in there because we know she hits the salon once every, 3 or 4 times a year. Pet care, kids sports, nothing in there right now. Birthday. So the birthdays in their household in October, in February, in March, and in June. Right now, they're not sure what kind of travel they're going to do next summer. They're not going to do anything right now. We're going to leave that blank for now just to see what the cash flow looks like. But they have fairly consistently spent about $3,500 on Christmas for everybody and the extra food and any kind of travel they might do for Christmas. So we're just going to put a $3,500 in there. No charitable donations, and the savings transfer. We're going to pull that across and hope that they maintain pulling that savings aside. And so now we can take the total expenses and drag it across. And this is how it will flow out as the total expenses per month. And then the net cash flow. Let's pull that across. And this is where I like to actually do something called conditional formatting. So what we're going to do is come back up here. We're going to hit the conditional formatting, and we're going to do a new rule. Format only cells that are less than 0. And what we want to do is we want to format that cell so that it's red. It pops out anytime we fall into a negative in any one month. And because it's red, it might be hard to see the numbers. So what we want to do is change the font to white. All right, let's do the same thing for this ending balance. Okay, so now you can see what's going on. It looks great for first 2 or 3 months. They're doing really well. They're feeling pretty comfortable. And then Christmas hits. that $3,500 bill from Christmas becomes really painful. Not only does it put them behind in terms of the month, but look what happens to their ending balance. They just don't dig themselves out until July. And part of the reason for that is they've got another month where they have things like the hair and beauty hit, but the real thing that hit them was the homeowner's insurance that hit at that same time. And you know what I forgot to even put in? Look at that. See, this is why we do this. We forgot to put in car insurance. So things are even worse than we thought. Let me take a look at where they do their car insurance. Car insurance is in January, $840, and in July. They do that twice a year as well. So painful. So now you can see that once Christmas hits, they never quite recover. Everything just goes negative and they don't get back until even in the next Christmas, they still haven't recovered from last Christmas. So now they know that they can adjust things, but let's not be too hasty here. There's a couple things to keep in mind in terms of this cash flow. One is we are putting 10% into savings. So maybe that savings is for those things that we're talking about. And that's one thing to think about. But look at what happens. In the first 3 months, they saved $1,800. That still didn't quite get them out of the hole. In fact, we could, if we wanted to, let's do some adjustments. So let's do that. We're going to make some global adjustments. So $614 is 10% savings a month. But what if it's zero? We can see that if they are saving nothing, now they're kind of getting back to zero. All that money is actually getting them somewhere. They get negative in December because they haven't saved up enough immediately, but it's not too bad. But again, keep in mind that one of the challenges is you still have a couple of months where you're cutting pretty close while not making any savings at all. And that becomes really painful because remember these other things, the maintenance on the house and the car. And think about things like birthdays or any other emergencies. If we're cutting it close, this gives us an idea of what that means. So it may mean that we look at things and we say, well, maybe $3,500 is too much we should be spending on Christmas. Maybe we should just cut it back a little bit, do some other things with Christmas, make it special in a less consumerist kind of way. And you can see that when they do that, things become a little bit more realistic. And now all of a sudden you can see that by next December, they essentially have enough money to have the same Christmas they did last year because they built it up and they've controlled that spending as they went. But again, one of the challenges is that they aren't actually saving anything right now. So you always want to put something into that savings just so that you're not just always treading water forever. You want to somehow figure out how you're growing. And one way to do that is to put something in savings, have it siphon off automatically into a savings account so that you don't have to think about it. In fact, in our household, we don't just have one savings account. We have like 7. We have one for a car. When we need to buy a new car, we're siphoning off a little bit of money and putting it into a car account. We're putting money aside for a vacation we might want to do sometime so that we're not always playing catch up to the things that we've spent in the past, but we're getting ahead of some of these costs that we know are going to come up. We have one of our savings accounts that's actually house maintenance because we know something's going to happen at some point and it's going to cost us money. And we would rather have some money planned for that than no money. And then we're just borrowing money and having to pay it off. And then you're paying interest on things in the past. And that's when it's hard to get on top of things. But let me give you one final hint about what you can do with this. One of the things that I do is when I project forward, I make sure to go and anytime I'm projecting forward, I turn it italics. And by turning it italics, I know that's not a real number. Now, if that's not enough of a difference for you, the other thing you could do is you could highlight it in green if you're just guessing what that number might be. And then once it's locked in, you can go back, remove the color, and lock in the actual number. And that way you know what's actually happening and what's projection. And that gives you an idea. One of the reasons I really like to do things this way is because a budget seems to tell me what not to spend my money on. And that seems really painful, especially when I hit things that I can't control and I need to spend my money on it anyway. But a cash flow projection tells you where your money is going. And if you're not happy with where your money is going, it empowers you to say, well, I'm going to do something different. I don't need to spend $3,500 on Christmas. I can spend a lot less than that and still have a decent Christmas. And then I know what that costs me if I do spend that much. It tells me how many months it takes me to get over that. So that's what you want to do. You want to build things. You want to project it forward. You want to see what's going on. And it can be really empowering because it can give you the power of knowing where your money is going and what you can do to control where your money's going. If you like this, please click a like on this video. Tell us what other kinds of videos you'd like us to do. We're always open to suggestions. Thanks for watching.